Good morning, everybody. Today is Friday, January the 3rd, and today's project is going to be making a beef stew. This is going to be what you might call a homesteading beef stew. Why do I say that? Because all the vegetables will have come from our garden, or they did come from our garden, you could say. I like making my stews in this big, heavy-duty Dutch oven. This is my favorite go-to Dutch oven for soups and stews. And we're going to be cooking this thing on the wood cook stove, of course. And I'm going to start off by putting the Dutch oven right over the fire. You put the wood in here. This is where the fire is, right here. So we'll start off by placing the Dutch oven right there. And I'm going to give it a couple squirts of olive oil. Maybe a tablespoon there, and maybe a tablespoon here. Alright, that's about half of the batch of beef stew meat that we purchased. I usually go between 1.5 and 2 pounds of beef stew meat. So the next step is going to just lightly coat this meat with the flour, just lightly coat it, and then we'll take it over to the Dutch oven. All right, we've lightly coated the meat. This is half the meat, remember. Our Dutch oven is nice and warm. Eventually, we're going to move it over to the cooler side of the wood stove. In the old days, they called these wood stoves ranges because you had a range of heat. This is the hottest part, and then as you go farther away from the firebox, it gets a little bit cooler. The rest of the meat's in the soup now, in the stew. I'm going to let that brown nicely before I start in with my vegetables. We try to find meat that is as local and organic as possible. We buy our pork a half a pig at a time from a neighbor who raises them sustainably, whatever that means. She raises her own piglets and so forth. But for beef, that's a different story. We did find a little store nearby that sells organic ground beef, but they don't have beef stew meat. So we have to go to a small grocery store about a town away. And we think that the meat that they butcher comes from within the state. So that's about the best we can do. So there we go. We're going to just brown that up and start in with vegetables. I'm going to move it to the side a little bit. I think our meat is nicely browned. That little bit of flour gave it a nice kind of a gravy. Really looks good. Smells good. The smell fills up the whole cabin. The next step is to put a quart of water in there. It's a quart of water. I also put in a bay leaf. We just got some new bay leaves. Quite a luxury to have bay leaves. Then the next thing, I'm actually building kind of a soup stock. So I'm going to be using onion and celery for my soup stock. This is the onion. We like onions, so we use quite a bit, as you can see. And we grow all of our own vegetables. Eventually we run out, maybe in the spring. Now for celery, let me tell you about that. I told you I was going to tell you about celery. We ran out of celery. We grow about 18 heads of celery during the summer. But we ran out because we use a lot of celery in our soups and our salads. So we also grow 18 bulbs, if you will, of celeriac. And they store really well. These celeriacs will keep us right into the spring for our spring soups. And so I just chop them up like this. It's kind of an ugly root, but I highly recommend growing celeriac simply because it stores really well. So we've got our onion and our celeriac. If you have celery, use celery. But the celeriac is a good second choice. And so that, along with our water and our meat and our bay leaf, that is our so-called soup stock. And we're going to let that simmer for about 1.5 hours. I'll catch up with you then. All right, our simmer time is over with. It's been simmering for 1.5 hours, and I've been busy making bread while this thing's been simmering, but I want to fish out the bay leaf first. It's a luxury to have bay leaves. We haven't had any for a while. And as you may have seen, I was chopping up vegetables, chopping up mushrooms, which we did not grow, by the way. We cheated and bought those. That's optional. Mushrooms, but if you can get some good mushrooms, it's really worth it. But all the potatoes and the carrots we grew in our garden. And I mean, we don't buy potatoes at the store, we just grow all of our own, and we use a lot of potatoes too. So I put that in there, and the next step is to just cover it with water, and that's going to continue to simmer. With any luck, we'll have that for lunch. Give this a nice stir, blend it all in, and then when all the vegetables are done cooking, I'm going to emulsify, or I'll use the blender on them. Get you a new camera angle here. You can see the nice beef, onions, celeriac. Use celery if you want it. If you can get it, nice organic celery. We could have bought some at the store, but we have our own celeriac, which we have for this very purpose of making soups. And then, of course, our potatoes, carrots, mushrooms. We do not put any garlic in here. So there we go. That's going to simmer for a couple of hours more, or until the vegetables are done. And then I'll break it up and I'll show you what it looks like then. Okay, let's go in here and have a look at the soup, see how it's doing. Looks good. Smells good. The vegetables are just about finished cooking. And then we can put a wand to it. Have it for lunch. Looks very nice. Look at that. Alright, we'll check on it again in another hour.